All right, it seems we are live. Hello, everybody. My name is Bert Rebhandl. I'm a film critic in Berlin, and I've been invited by Vision du Réel to host this little afternoon discussion with 4 filmmakers. We were supposed to be 5, but Alejandro from Cuba did not make it. Like his connection seems to have problems, so we are only 4, or we are 4 people now. Andrés from Argentina, Isabel from Mexico, Anton from, actually, where Anton? I forgot to say.
Paris.
Mm-hmm. And Helga from Iceland. The Vision du Réel gave us this selection of 5 films that we all of us watched and that we will talk about. And it's also, they also gave us a notion or a term that we should also maybe keep in mind or discuss, the term of model. What is a model, or what can be models for documentary filmmaking, or how, in which way, if I understand correctly, the intention of the title, the work with protagonists, with people, with characters, with can be framed or like can be understood in the terms of model. The 5 films to me had interesting similarities, but of course stand alone, each of it, for its distinct aesthetic, political, humanist projects that I saw in them. And we will just start by making a little round among the participants, that they maybe give a brief introductions themselves of their project, what their film is about. And I would like to start with Anton, just due to the simple fact that coincidentally I watched his film. His film was the first that I watched, and it like all 5 of them, it got me very much. It raised my attention to a very high level, because all of them ask a lot of questions to follow them somehow. Anton, what is your film actually about? Because I was constantly wondering what kind of story I'm seeing and listening to.
Well, in a few words, to resume, the film takes place in a small French village, and we follow 5 individuals who are reunited in a house, and who we see preparing an extreme symbolic action, and they seem to be reunited in a form of a strong existential anguish. They have stopped speaking, and they seem to drift slowly to a fatal resolution.
We will talk later in a bit more detail in which way, like how you found these people and what kind of characters they actually are. To me, it seemed a little bit like in the beginning, like something like a homeless community, maybe even deliberately cast out of society. But we will see. And we can also discuss it a little bit in comparison with the other groups of protagonists that we have. Maybe I go next to Helga, because Helga, in your film, I couldn't help but notice that in the closing titles, you say that the people that you show are named as performers, yeah? And there is also aspects of, I would at least say, narrativity to a certain degree, fragments of narrations. It's actually very interesting that sometimes I didn't even completely understand how these people that we see are related to each other. But what we see basically is a remote place in Iceland, if I would have to surmise. And there is the spare parts relate to derelict cars and to a man, or to several men who work with these car wrecks. Scrap, yeah. Why did you call these people performers?
It's a very practical. There's nothing. There's no deeper meaning there, really. It's just. I just find it the nicest way to describe the people who appear in the film. So yeah, and I've used this term before, and that's why. I mean, they're not performing art or anything. You know, they're not. It's just they appear in the film, and yeah, that's it.
How did you find this place, and how did you find the people?
Yeah, it's well, I am from a farm a couple of fjords away, so it's far up in the north west of Iceland, and this guy who owns all the car wrecks, the main person who like this is his making. He is I mean, people have very different opinions of what he's doing and of him, and he's hated by some and loved by some, and I've just always been like aesthetically fascinated with this place, and yeah, so that's basically how I found it. It's nothing, and the Icelandic title is The Good Shepherd, which I kind of, in Icelandic it's the Good Hoarder, so it has it makes more sense in Icelandic, but yeah, I also had a problem with the English title, so it all, I mean, at the end you have to be practical, so the spare parts is you know, it's a practical solution. So
if I would like try an interpretation of the original title, The Good Shepherd, it is like that this place becomes somehow almost like something like a refuge, because the number of people there is increasing. It's like it's drawing people. Is it something like this also, that it's a social space, it's becoming a social space, or what?
No, not at all. It's just it's the Good Shepherd is, he's a good shepherd of car wrecks. You know, he's the good shepherd of things that we throw away. He's the good shepherd of things that we don't want to see. And I remember, I mean, I got the idea like 2009, so I've been like carrying this with me for a long time. And I remember, yeah, in the beginning when I was writing the treatment, I ended with saying that this film was like a mirror for the Icelandic nation, because we sell everything. You know, we sell, like, tourism has become our main. We are like Mallorca of the north. You know, it's very, nature is, we're selling everything, but still we don't. Yeah, we don't like garbage, you know. So it was supposed to be like a mirror of the soul of the Icelandic nation, but you know, it's just a place. It's a farm. Used to be a sheep farm, and now it just, I mean, he has got like 600 or 700 car wrecks and all kinds of metal junk there, and what he does doesn't make any sense, and that's, to me, fascinating. Because he rarely sells spare parts. It's just an obsession. He doesn't collect stamps, he collects car wrecks. And it's also, I mean, the rest of the people there are basically his mother and his girlfriend and his son. And then there's just people who are driving by, and they come, you know, they come and they tourists, Icelandic and foreign tourists.
We'll get back to your film, of course, as well. As Isabel, since we already talked about with Helga, also about this ambivalence of original title, English title, about the compromises that sometimes you have to make. Your film also has basically two titles, a Spanish one and an English one. Maybe you can tell us about both of them, and how you came to make a film about boys, young boys, in a very Mexican countryside, probably.
Yes, about the title, I don't know, it was funny because in Spanish it was like the first title I put to the project like 6 years ago, and it wasn't really sure, but it sticked, and I just, you know, kept it. And it's, as I told you, in Spanish it means countryside season, and it was a bit about well, the film is about summer in the life of Brian, so I wanted to, I don't know, like to portray this season in his life, which is one of his favorites because he doesn't have to go to school. And how I came up with the story, well, Brian and his family, my family has a ranch of fighting bulls, breeding fighting bulls. We've had the ranch for about 20-25 years, and Brian's family has worked with us since we started with the ranch. So I practically grew up with them. And I always had this fascination for the cowboys and this cowboy world. And I was really close with them. So I said, like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I have to do something about it. I have to share a bit of this world. And I started filming, just, you know, filming. We made a teaser. We won a very small film fund. And we started the project, and people told me, like, okay, your material is very pretty, but you have to have a story. Like, you're not, like, what are you going to say throughout the film? So I started living with them, like spending a lot of time with them for several years, getting to know them really well. And that's how I knew Brian. And after a few years, I decided to tell this story through his eyes. And I found very interesting to share this context and this cowboy world through the children's eyes. And well, that's how I came up with the story.
So it was basically nearby, and you didn't even have to look for it. It came to you, or it was already there.
Yeah, in a way, yes.
Very good. Yeah, Andrés, you have a story, or you have a topic with your film that for many people will come to a certain degree as a surprise, because we don't know much about migration from Africa to South America. How did you come upon your topic for your film?
Hello. Yes, first I tell you, I was working on a script, and I was including a couple of African migrants because I was also intrigued about this new migration in Argentina by then, a few years ago. And when I started like researching more deeply into it, I got really involved with a few of these people, and I started to realize I wanted to spend time with them. So somehow it was like traveling to a very far distant place and at the same time being in my own city, and that got me kind of fascinated. So I've started spending a lot of time in that neighborhood where the street sales are, which is called Once, and going to many religious parties and going to many of their places, of the community places. And somehow the film is about that. It's the result of spending all those 4 years with these people and work together with them. That's what I'd say.
After this first circle, I would get back to Anton, because now I think we can phrase the question of your protagonist again a little bit more specifically, because in case of Andrés, for example, it would be more or less easy to tag the film as a film about migrants from Senegal for a global audience, unexpected place like Argentina. And Isabel has made a film about adolescence in Mexico, we can say, on one level. Yeah. And Helga has made a film about one character, an odd character, but a character that we can recognize somehow immediately in Iceland. And your characters are very enigmatic, are very mysterious. Yeah, we never learn really who they are, what they are. Yeah. That is the idea behind your art in a more general sense, I think. Yeah, you work on this mystery, or like this, the mystery of this, the openness of this question is part of the principle of the film, if I understand correctly.
Yes, it is. I mean, I didn't think so much about making a mystery, but the starting point of the film was to reunite all these people in the films are close friends of mine that had never played in a film, and that they all have a kind of relationship to how they feel in society in different ways. They are kind of unadapted or mad at society, or in various forms, or live kind of parallel lives to it as much as they can. And they're my friends that I really close friends that I love, and I wanted to reunite them in this and create this group with them that first started like a, you could imagine an anarchist group that lives a little bit cut off like this. And the first, the origin was all these groups that have made actions in France these last years, that they I don't know, they burn banks in the night, or they attack this and this factory or whatever. That was a starting point, but the idea was not to make a film about anarchist actions. It slowly shifted towards something more intimate, maybe, and this this feeling of I see them a little bit as people who, like, they had tried maybe some political engagement or political discourses, and slowly seeing that their words don't have much effect on reality and on the society around them, they have gone into something way more extreme. And what they prepare for me is a kind of, yes, symbolic political action that you could see as lighting yourself on fire or something. Also this, it was also a response. I was curious about these extreme nihilistic groups, or how you could call it, like active nihilism, like a response to a nihilistic society or something. So that was what we were trying to explore. But in the end, it also comes down to filming gestures and filming these friends and filming how they eat, how they sleep, and kind of exercising altogether a feeling of a bad feeling towards things that were going on around us. It's like if they died in the film, they didn't have to die or kill themselves in reality or something. But I don't know if that answers a little bit or clarifies a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. Still, it leaves the question that you already posed yourself, or you mentioned in passing yourself. It is interesting to find your film in this documentary film festival, because it is really at the it goes along, like, it is very much also readable as a at least as a hybrid form between fiction and documentary. Yes. And actually, I think with the last frame, with the last shot, which is kind of like not a, which could give something like a clue for a possible interpretation as well. Yeah, it's almost also like a story, a plot point, even, we could say. Yeah. So if you send the film, or if you give it to festivals, do you also like propose it to other festivals, like to fiction film festivals, or like, do you?
Yes, I do. I mean, for me, it's not so interesting, the separation between documentary or fiction. I don't think about it at all. The film is as much documentary for me as it is not fiction, because also how we worked was there was no script. I had some ideas of scenes, of a progression, but we put ourselves in a situation which was all living in this house and working together for 7 or 8 days, and the thing shifted constantly. So if I saw, I don't know, very stupid things, but the one who is eating an apple, I saw that he eat the whole apple, my friend, and I said, okay, we shoot the scene where you eat the whole apple. It was working like that. But we wanted to have a very precise setting of framing and working on these concise framings and light and stuff. A little bit so that this house feels like I don't know, it's like a world in between, like it's between life and death somehow.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I also
it has a lot of real things, scenes like when he breaks the glasses and goes in this anger. This is a scene I lived with that same person, him completely losing it and destroying everything at his place and stuff. There's things that I put in, or the shaving scene, all these things is stuff that I've seen before and that were then reenacted.
That's exactly the point that I was about to ask, because this scene with shattering the glasses particularly is interesting to me. And I was thinking that maybe it was, and you already said it now, it could be like a reenactment of something that had happened before when there was no camera present. And so it's not actually like playing it, but it's repeating it, or like looking into it again somehow.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. And it was very strange, very brutal for me and for him also to play it again, but almost liberating, because for me, well, that scene had been a bit traumatizing, that I lived with him earlier, because I saw a friend completely losing it and becoming very almost dangerous. And him, by doing it, I think it's also made us freed ourselves from that real previous moment where it happened.
Mm-hmm. So the status of the characters, of the people in front of the camera is, of course, I think probably the most pertinent for the question of how we have to take the film. And it's also the answer that it is actually both, yeah, documentary and fictional, yeah. And not only in this way that I think it was, there's this famous quote like that every actor in any fiction film is actually a documentary of this person acting a character for a movie. Yeah, it's not only in this sense.
Yes, I think that. I mean, yeah, I didn't think about this boundary. For me, it's very mixed, and I don't think that many documentaries are absolute documentary. I mean, they can be documents, but there's always a form of shaping things. So in the end, you never really just capture reality. You make it happen, or you provoke it.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Isabel and Helga, in your two films, there is one aspect that would also be very pertinent for Alejandro, but he is not here. Landscape is a very important factor. I think both of your films actually I saw somehow as a conversation between the format that we have with the human frame, yeah, and this magnificent, in both cases, landscape that they live in, it, that they are surrounded by. And Helga, in your case, it seems to me that you very much play, not play, but you work with this relationship. It's not a discrepancy. It's something that is, this is a magnificent landscape, and we have this very particular place within it. How much did you think of this conceptually?
A lot. I mean, I meant to include it from the beginning, and I mean, this scrapyard is kind of it's landscape within a landscape in a way. And actually, it was for me at least kind of difficult to figure out how to film the scrapyard and the metal and stuff. And actually, the landscape around this. I mean, Iceland is full of magnificent landscape, but the landscape around the scrapyard is dull. There's like not a lot there. So I had to find like specific places, like with the sunset and the waterfall and stuff like that around to show that this is a not so beautiful place somehow within, surrounded with amazing scenery, and the main character, he is not fascinated by it at all. So it's more a reflection of because I'm brought up close to it, actually in a much more beautiful, typically beautiful surrounding, couple of fjords away. So yeah, he is just not aware of it at all, and somehow I just wanted to mediate that the landscape is there, the natural landscape. But he is there just doing his thing, you know, and the scrap metal is his landscape, you know, and yeah, I mean, then you can go further with it, of course, and philosophize with the whole.
That's very interesting.
Meaning, but yeah,
absolutely. But it's interesting that he doesn't have a great awareness of it, which is, of course, somehow natural. We all live somehow regardless of our close surroundings, because it's always there, so we don't always pay much attention to it. Yeah, but it was very interesting to see it framed like this. Yeah, Isabel, in your case, with young people, yeah, growing up on a farm with animals, there's of course this question of nature in general. Yeah, because Brian is very much attached to these animals, and in some way we could even like see him as a person who doesn't want to become cultural and wants to stay natural somehow. Yeah. How much did you like project maybe even this this idea about becoming a grown-up person, becoming a subject, becoming a reflective person, yeah, as opposed to these somehow natural surroundings?
Yes, I believe right now, like in the world we live in, or at least here in Mexico, it's harder to watch kids grow like in rural, you know, not in the cities. And so I wanted to explore, yeah, this thing about growing up in the countryside, and also to portray all this context through the kids' eyes, the context they are living, where many families have to go to, like many men go to the United States to find better opportunities. So some families, you know, what happens with the families that have to stay. And for me, it was interesting also to see how Brian grew up without a father in a very masculine world, no, surrounded by men, and how he has to prove himself that he can do it and he is brave enough, no, to become a cowboy. So yeah, it was interesting, or it was important for me to share all this, I don't know, all these pieces of the puzzle through the kids' eyes. Also, like there's a part where they play, like, you know, the, how do you say, the police, the migrants and the police, which I found, you know, really interesting, how they have violence very close to them and how they normalize violence in a way. So yeah, it was about building up this character with all the pieces and all the subjects I had around him, and yeah, how to build it up with what I had, no, with what I saw in him.
Actually, his name is already a cultural projection, isn't it? Because it's not a common name, Brian, yeah?
Yeah, in Mexico, yeah. And most of the kids are like Brian and James, and, you know, they have these names in English, most of them. Yeah.
And he says that he doesn't want to go to America, even if he has an Anglophone name, yeah?
Exactly. So yeah, that for me was interesting as well, because some kids, they say, like, you know, that you have this thing of the American dream a lot there, and they want to go to find better opportunities. But in Brian's case, he wants to stay and he wants to keep with the family tradition, which I found really interesting as well. Yeah.
It's almost like a little bit of counter mythology to this big question about Mexico, its relation to the United States, to its wealth. And they also talk about Walmart, for example, this supermarket chain that is like a symbol of the American colonization. And this is a very interesting little dialogue between the two boys. Mm-hmm. You had these two boys sometimes, like you start with a very beautiful shot, them on the bicycle, yeah. The camera is riding in front of them, and we watch them riding the bicycle and having a dialogue, you know. Maybe you can tell a little bit about how such a scene actually works out, because to a certain degree we also have to assume that this is, I mean, there was inevitably some work of staging it. It was not staged, because you had the camera have ready. You knew that they would ride the bicycle, that they would talk, there would have to be sound work to understand them and everything. So this is also, it's not like director's cinema in the director's sense, yeah? Yeah, no, I think as Anton said, even though it's documentary, you have to, you know, work with reality in some way. And what I did is that I spent a lot of time with them, so I knew which actions and what they were gonna do most of the time. So yeah, it was like, for them, it became more normal with the time that I had the camera all the time with me, and I had the camera. And yeah, I had to microphone them, but sometimes, for example, we microphone the whole house. So they kind of forget that, you know, there were microphones inside, and I was just with my camera the whole time. And yeah, in certain activities, I had to do, you know, some things, because like in the countryside, it was really hard to be, you know, running after them. And sometimes they were really far away, and, you know, they were complicated activities to film. So yeah, they got used to it, and I had to, you know, I had to microphone them, or sometimes I had to plan a bit more their activities, always trying to
you know, to be like invisible for them as much as I could. But yeah, I had to work it out in a certain way.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Andrés, you have your film has, among other things, two features that are a little bit opposed to each other. One is the street scenes that often show us that the camera is actually somehow distant, and you even like try to be invisible to the police also as well, maybe. But then you have these very intimate scenes where you are basically alone with your protagonists and almost within their subjectivity. Yeah, we hear them talk to themselves somehow, pray also, for example. Yeah, can you tell a little bit more in more detail about this work with them? Like, what was there actually done before shooting to get to know them and to get to the moment where you can actually could start to work with the camera and with the sound?
Yes, it was in going in a different senses, all that thing, because there were times in which we kind of plan things we wanted to do, and we even prepare like a route for the dialogue to take place or things like that. And generally more in the beginning, like the first week or so, it was so easy somehow to work in that way. But then we started shooting maybe going in 2 people or 3 maximum, and the shooting was so much more chaotic. It became, the character was not so able for us to do repetitions or anything, like a kind of a common thing about the process of 4 years shooting with a non-actor that starts in a very easy way and turns out to be not so easy after all that time. So shootings suddenly became more in a rush, trying to catch whatever we can in the 2 hours we had like the opportunity to do. So it was, for instance, the street scenes. It's been done like in that context with many police situations in between, many complications, and the camera was trying to catch the most possible for in that context. But that somehow, especially related to distance, I found then particularly interest because it's one of the subjects of the film somehow, the distance in between the main character and his family, or in between himself and the world somehow. And so the distant camera in those contexts, I think it worked quite accordingly, and also makes it possible for a lot of things to happen in front of him and after him, and completing that with those ambient sounds I particularly love on those crowded places with film, like the beach or the streets. I think we kind of found a device we enjoyed very much about the shooting in the distance.
Can you say maybe a few words about how you initially got in contact with them? Were they open to your interest from the beginning, or did you have to like gain their trust?
I had to gain their trust in many instances, I'd say. At the beginning, it was somehow easy. I met the main character and his brother, that is one of the other characters, the dreadlocks guy, at a party I'd been right by the beginning of the time I was researching. It was 2017, and I remember to arrive to a party at 6 p.m. because I was said it was starting by then, and these 2 guys were playing because they are also musicians besides vendors. And they arrived around 3 p.m. It was like a Wednesday. They arrived 3 p.m. and started playing, and I got totally like in love with them, amused. So I got in touch, and we started getting together, and the relationship was going so good. We were enjoying really spending time together. But then with the years and years in between, I had to gain their confidence many times. Like, for instance, showing part of the movie to them, or for instance, trying to find more money to be more, to generate more interest on that way, or many things. And one of the other guy, the one who receives the main character at the beginning, he happens to be the son of a filmmaker, and in Senegal. And in fact, he was my very closest ally in the community. He was really interested in taking part of the movie. He was helping me with many things besides acting. And we got really close friends. We've been getting together many times during all this period, like every Sunday, I would say, during 1 or 2 years, we used to go together. And so that was a very important part of my introduction to the community, my friendship with him. Well, I don't know if I've answered more or less.
Yeah, absolutely. You have this one. You have one very interesting scene because the dialogue is so resonant, where they talk. Two guys talk about that one of them was actually part in a fiction film movie production. If I understood correctly, it's this very interesting and famous film Sama by Lucrezia Martel. Yeah. So he was
yes, it is.
taking part in a prestige production, we could say, of Argentinian cinema. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
And this was also maybe, this scene was also maybe something like a reenactment of a dialogue that had happened already before, or did they spontaneously come to talk about this?
I was so amused that every time I ran with this guy called Masamba, because in one time I was even thinking about him being the protagonist. So I was visiting him as and he has a small shop at the gallery, and sometimes I was visiting him, or I was running into him in the parties or in the selling streets. And I was so fascinated that every time I ran into him, he was telling me stories about the works he was doing, because he works as an actor. And I love the point of view of his experiences in the movies or in the advertisings. So I've just asked him to, when we got together to shoot, I've just asked him to tell the main character about his part in Sama. And it's a one-shot. It's a one-shot opportunity. So yeah, I find it very interesting as well, that dialogue they improvise.
I find it also interesting formally, because it's a way that we see many scenes these days, because it's now technically possible. But it's sorry, I have to switch off my phone. It's this way you work with sound, you know, the characters are in the distance, but we are, by hearing them intimately, we are as well like far from them and very close to them. We are like really next to them. And there's also many fiction film directors who work with this device. For example, Noir is famous for his shots like this, yeah, but many others as well. Is something that is really very interesting, and you seem to like this too, yeah?
Yeah, I had some references of that shot. I think particularly by the days we were shooting, I had in mind a reference of a short film called Broken Specs, from this guy made 14 and the classical period. Okay, doesn't matter. But yeah, that device I was interested in particularly, and has something to do with this idea I think I was mentioning at the beginning about the sense of being close and distant at the same time. Makes a kind of intimacy that I found particularly interesting.
Exactly, because I think it links these scenes that are like indoors and that are close to the characters, but even on the street we are very close to them, because we take this intimacy into the streets actually with them, and technically it's also possible. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, the context now I can remember, it was so complicated, the context in that square. It's kind of a little bit dangerous place to be with a camera, and we had around some people that one was like vomiting like 2 meters there, and kind of violent situation, and it was in the middle of the day, but it was somehow like that. So we were a little bit alert, like 360. And what was also strange and particular about this project was that the dialogues itself, I got to know their translation like few days after the shooting. Maybe sometimes it was even month, because translation was a very big, huge job that we were doing in parts, and so I had the notion of what, if the dialogue was kind of working or not, but I had no idea of what were they saying. So that was very particular about this film, the way of shooting it.
That's another very interesting aspect. I didn't even think of it, but I should have been aware of it. Yeah, that they are speaking a different language. Yeah. Anton, in your film, it's a little bit different from the others as well with regard to how you use text in your film. You display some quotations, like we see something written on a wall. There is this very famous quote that is also the title of a film by Guerberoff, In Giro Simos Nocte Consumum Ignis. You have a chanson by Jean Moreau. Can you tell a little bit about how you use these things, like in which way which part is it similar, like, or is it like ideas how we could interpret the things that we see?
Yeah. Yes, for me it was it was about giving some signs in the film that you can catch on, and maybe that give you some form of, even if it's very minimal, but some idea of what the relationship is, or what these characters relate themselves to, or what they feel. It's also just an opening to their thoughts or what they're feeling, because they're obviously not speaking, so they have the gestures, but they leave some words behind, or they burn this HSBC bank poster in the beginning, which is also just saying that this is also what they're leaving behind in a way, or what they're opposing themselves to, or they work like sometimes like gates to get in a little bit more to what they're feeling, or what is happening inside them. And also, like, having this Guerberoff reference is it's also maybe a very French thing that I didn't think about, but it's also in France you have people reference a lot when they speak. They have a lot of quotations about this and this. They express themselves a lot with words of others, and the reference to the bar was also because we imagined the whole film like a kind of creating a situationist thing, but in a very, of course, much more darker and and brutal way. It was not about utopia, urbanistic utopia, but it was it was a reference to that, how we were working, because the film was also creating just this kind of situation of reenacting things of life or surpassing things of life. Yeah, and what we see written in the book, what the character writes is taken from Albert Caraco, who wrote a text called, I don't know the title in English, but it's called Breviaire du Chaos, which means Notes of Chaos. And it's extremely dark text, but very lucid text, but kind of frightening to read, but which was also at the origin of the film. It's like a very, in this text, there's a lot of very brutal truths that the Caraco expresses that you cannot really say anything against, because they seem kind of true, but at the same time his vision of the world is so dark that you have immediately a reaction towards it when you read it. And I think that's also maybe what he wanted you to have when he wrote it, that you react to it in a way that, okay, he might be right on things, but you don't want to go down that path, so you have a kind of rebellion against it. And I think that's a little bit how the film works for me also, because I don't want to comply with this idea of suicide or this anguish. I want to get free from it, you know. So
the last shot of the movie, very striking one. The opening of the gates we could see at is it a geese farm or something? Yeah. It's like a stunning picture somehow, and I read it also like almost like a written commentary, but in visual form, because the association for me, of course, is foie gras, is like stuffed liver, or like is a sort of like image of decadence, but also like passivity or even like violence in serving luxury, decadent luxury, like those associations that you would subscribe to too?
I didn't at all think about foie gras, but that's interesting. Well, for me, this shot is more like, I don't know, when we were editing the film in lockdown also, and I think the whole film became much more lockdown film in general, because also of what we were experiencing. And this shot, it was like a virus. Like, it was also, for me, it was, they're all shouting so loud and they say nothing. It's a bit like what the characters in the film are escaping also. You could see it also as an image of some part of society, let's say, that they leave behind. But it's also like this, it could also be like a virus, this nihilistic virus, if you want, that is also spreading. So, and also because it's like they're given their freedom, you could say, that the gates are opening, but they don't want to leave. They stay there. They want to keep on in this stubborn, idiotic way of living in and of what they're, the only way they can live, because that's the way the humans use them. So, but foie gras could also be a yeah.
It's also because we see them eating this food in the beginning that is something like, even like, if I understood correctly, like stolen from things that other people would probably maybe even not eat anymore. And
yeah, exactly. We actually, they I mean, I guess all the supermarkets does that, but in the region where we filmed, a lot of guys that were helping us to shoot the film, they lived like that. They were going to this supermarket where we shot and stealing them in the trash cans in the back.
Very good. Maybe we could try a little bit. You all saw each other's films as well, and it would be very interesting for me, for all of us, I guess, to hear a little bit what you saw actually in the works of your colleagues. Helga, was there anything in one of the films, of the other 4 films, we can also include Alejandro's film, that you maybe like could relate to, or something that you found interesting for your own work, or also in opposition to it, that you just came to think about it a little bit?
Yeah, many things. I mean, in Alejandro's film, I think, I mean, it's this space. It's the space of something being torn apart, and you have the big machines on a bigger scale than in my film, of course. Well, and maybe his film is a little bit more poetic in a way, with verbally poetic. My character doesn't like to speak in the camera. He likes to perform in front of the camera, but he hates talking in front of the camera. So I ended up with a different film than what I was going to make in the beginning. And actually, I'm quite happy, you know. So it's fine. It's good. But also, I think space is a word that is very that can relate to all the films, like inner space and outer somehow. I think they all the films reflect on an inner space, you know. I think like in Andrés' film, you have this chaos, you have this noise, you have the distant, somehow kind of isolated feeling, even though it's the film, I think it's the film with the most isolation, still it's the film with the most people in it, and in the background as well, and also in the foreground. And I mean, in Isabel's film, I think also you have a person, yeah, I mean, in some ways, some similarities, you might say, even between my character and hers, because my character just, he loves to stay, he has to work as a truck driver. I don't include it in the film, but he loves being exactly there. This is his roots. His father used to be a sheep farmer, but he, you know, he just has a different approach to farming. And I mean, in Anton's film, I think it's the space, definitely. It's a closed space, and I agree. I don't. I mean, I think I like to have an open gate, open boundaries between documentary. I mean, what is documentary? It's like lots of different types of films anyway, and then you have fiction. It's so many different types anyway. So I like this approach of not always locking it down, what it means and what is what. And anyway, I mean, when you make a documentary like Isabel was saying, you need to state stuff, something that you experienced. And I mean, yeah, in both Isabel and Anton and probably Andrés, you have to state stuff. I mean, it's just what you do. For me, it's so normal when you're making a documentary. I don't even need to talk about it, you know. It's just what you do. And I loved actually I think the film that was maybe, I mean, the most open film to me is Anton's film, because it's like, it's nihilistic in a way, and it's existentialistic, and it's very, you know, but still it's very much a manifestation of life somehow as well, which is really nice. So yeah, is that something somebody wants to pick up on?
Maybe I would add just a little question, because your film in the end that I found also very interesting, because that was something that in Anton's case also, there's often in documentary films, and you mentioned a little detail, you know, what do you include and what not, what should we know about the character and what do we not need to know, you know. And in your film, many things do actually not add up in the classical way that in Germany, we have this classical thing that they often speak about the people from the TV who come to the filmmaker and say, okay, this is all very interesting, but we have to know this and you have to add this because otherwise everything, yeah. And you, in the end, you give us this image of the drone that gives us the view from on top of it, which is not a comprehensive view. It's also not the aerial overview that we probably might expect or so, yeah. It's almost like an ironic nod to the question, to the aspect of what is a full picture, yeah?
Yeah.
You did it consciously.
Yeah, I mean, of course, all these questions that you get when you're pitching films or you're applying for grants, they're stupid, you know. I mean, I understand, you know, in a way we need to answer them and everything, but they are silly, you know, and we all know it. I think it's very, you know, in a way that I don't know why we are using them. I think they're outdated in a way, and But also, I mean, my problem with editing the whole film, I always ran into a wall when I tried to make a story, when I tried to make the film to make sense plot-wise or whatever. I mean, there were some plots there and stuff, but I just threw it all out. And I went back to the original idea, which is to thread something, it's images. And through that, I finally found the right way to edit it, you know. And, but actually because drone is like this horrible pornographic cliche, you know, Icelandic landscape on a drone is like, kill me, it's horrible, you know. It's like everybody's doing it in every single commercial, and it's been like that for years. And because we were talking about models, I was not going to use a drone, like never in this film. But then there was this young guy, I stayed like in a guest house close to the farm. And he just is like the young guy working there, and he owned a drone. He's the guy, a little bit chubby, who appears in the end of the film with the old lady. And he's just out of nowhere. And I love that element. I just like to put him in there. He's got the drone. So, you know, I'm not gonna try to explain it, you know. And because it makes sense on another level. It makes sense somewhere else, you know. It doesn't always have to be the story that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and he was always asking me, so are you going to use the drone? And I was like, no, I'm not going to use the drone. Oh, and then next time I came to the reception, are you going to use a drone? And I was like, no. Why are you asking? Because I have a drone. Do you want to see it? And then he was so sweet. So I like, okay, you show me your drone. And he was always bothering the tourists, you know, staying in the guest house, following them. And then I realized, like, okay, I'm going to use this lousy drone because it's not even good, but good quality, you know. And I'm going to use that and him. And in that way, I can like cheat the drone thing into, you know, it's not, I would, yeah, because there were scenes that many people suggested I should use drones in. And I just left them out, and I did not want to use drones. So yeah, but I mean, yeah.
A good and pointed end, yes. Isabel, would you maybe want to talk a little bit about your experience of the other films?
Yeah, it was really nice for me to watch, you know, all your films. Congratulations to all of you. And as Helga was saying, there are so many different ways of telling stories. No, for example, for me, it was a bit more, I don't know, if classical way of telling my story. I don't know, with a beginning, maybe an end. I had some interviews. So it was really interesting for me to watch all of your films and see all these different ways of building characters and to creating this, I don't know, to see the characters changing through the film. So yeah, it was very, very interesting for me. And I had some questions, for example, for Andrés. I wanted to know what your relationship with the characters is right now and what happened with them after the film.
He's trying to go back to Senegal to meet his son at this certain moment. Yeah, he's always like moving from a pension to another and losing his phone and having a new phone. So sometimes we lose contact for a while. And besides of the pandemic, I've been like of the lockdown, and so I've been moving not so much to the place they sell generally. So I haven't been seeing them like for a while, neither of them, but I'm in contact through voice messages or so. But yeah, for instance, he had his phone lost for a few months right now, and now he got a new one, and so. But I'm quite intrigued about them watching the finished version of the movie, because I haven't shown them the finished version yet. Well, yeah.
Isabel, in your case, how long did you shoot this film? How long did you work on it?
The whole project lasted 5 years, but we shot only about a month and a half between those 5 years. Yeah, actually we shot the whole summer, like for 4 weeks. And then the past years we shot like a week every year, a week and a half every year. Yeah.
Because this is also, of course, interesting from that aspect that later, 10 years, 20 years from now, you have a document of youth in its best way somehow. And it is like almost like it's incredibly precious to capture something like that, because all these people will grow up and will become like their parents or different, whatever. And it will be there forever. This one summer, this is also something like the essence of one glorious summer somehow, yeah, to steal something from time almost, yeah.
Yes, and also, the bullfighting, it's very controversial right now everywhere, and I don't think there will be any more bullfighting in a couple of years. So what happens with all these families? This is one of the last families who dedicate their life to the breeding of fighting bulls. So for me, it was important to share it as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anton, if you look at documentary films like of the participants here, but documentaries also in general, like you could also say somehow a little bit more orthodox documentaries, how do you watch these films? Like, what did you see, for example, in the examples here?
Well, generally, I'm much more influenced by documentary forms. I mean, because they can be very hybrid forms in documentary, and often formally they're can be much more strange and daring than fictional films. And I formally am much more curious about documentary films, and I don't consider myself far away from documentary. Even of how I work, I'm very bad at writing scripts. I'm already not in this kind of production system of fiction films or stuff like that. But also generally about your films, I enjoyed them very much, and I'm grateful that VdR exists, because it's films I would not most people will not be able to see, and that are so different, and that bring up a lot of curiosity on how they were made, and of course give new possibilities to films, and to influences to think differently also than I'm used to, for example. So it was very nice. Congratulations to all, and to Abyss. I don't know the name of the director that is not here.
Alejandro.
Yes, I really enjoyed this film also.
Mm-hmm. Well, André, maybe for you also a little a look at the other participants' films.
Yeah, as Isabel was saying, I've enjoyed very much somehow getting to know other places and different characters and different approaches to narration or not. And so yes, congratulations to all. I've enjoyed very much watching the films, and thank you also for having me in this and being part of this group we made with this subject.
I think we were actually quite lucky with the selection, because the films are really like very interesting, each on its own, but also in the combination. Like I already said, this room in Zoom will already be needed in a few minutes for another panel discussion. So I think we shall wrap it up here. It was very interesting to meet all of you, and I will be very eager to see what comes next from all of you. And I hope you will all get well through whatever the situation is in your country at the moment with the actual, I don't mention it, okay? Nevertheless, thank you for the movies. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Vision du Réel, for bringing us together in this way. And goodbye to everybody. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Hi, thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.